Welcome back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. It is Independent Showcase free. Yes, free, free. I will remember free it is. And it's another promotion that we've got on the cards today. And one that has been, wow, blowing people away over the last, especially over the last couple of years. I keep hearing it. We've had a lot of talent come from that promotion as well over to Art when we've done shows at Ignite. It is Drew from North Wrestling. How is it going, Drew?
It's going well. Thanks very much for asking. It's cold outside, so I've barely left the house in about 3 weeks, if I feel, but
It
it's a
is
good time.
freezing. It
Yeah,
is
it's a good time to
freezing.
book wrestling shows, you know what I mean? It's like,
Well, yeah, you got plenty of time at home to book it anyway. I mean, it's getting there is another thing. Getting to a
yeah.
show is another
Well, we
thing.
don't do shows in January because who's like, don't do a show in January. Come on.
No, no, definitely not. I even now working in wrestling, doing a little bit of work in wrestling, even though September's a dodgy month as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the weirdest one. September is the weirdest one across all of them. I think what it is the holidays have finished, so
Yeah,
everyone's kind of spent all the money on the holidays.
yeah.
Everyone's going back to school. Everyone's kind of going back to uni and all that type of stuff. And I think you just get this, but it's across the board. It's in like gigs and bands see the same sort of thing as well. September's just dead. It's weird. These little black spots.
Yeah, that is definitely the case in September. That's definitely September. Maybe the odd December one does all right. Generally, August does all right because of not now because of AEW, and you get every wrestling show that puts a show on that week. It's a big weekend normally. But anyway, enough of that. We'll digress on that. We'll come back to that. Look, North
Yes.
2016. First things first. Before we get to how it's the inception, how it all get. 2024 for North, I heard nothing but amazing things, and a bit of a curtain thing for us. We'd actually put on a show days apart. Literally, North
Yeah.
was on a Saturday, we was on a Sunday with Ignite. We put on a sponsor show of Ignite. But anyway, 2024, I heard nothing but good, amazing things about you guys. What was it like for you in 2024 with North Wrestling?
Yeah, it was a really good year. I think we had a good year in 2023, which is when we ran our first big show, which we call Thunderstruck, and we had 700 people there. We kind of expected maybe to push on a little bit more, but we wanted to do a few more shows outside of Newcastle.
Yep,
We did do it. We made our debut at All In Weekend at the Garage alongside Attack and Hustle for all caps.
yep,
That was in August, and then we ran Thunderstruck 2, which is the show that was close to Ignite's show. It was
yep.
the day before, I think. And we got like 800 people there, so it was a big success in that respect. But the life of a wrestling promoter is always wanting to do bigger and better and do more and move forward. But I think like having the reflection of we've had some really kind words at the end, like in NDA lists and stuff
Yeah,
like that. We've been included in, quite heavily, and a lot of it's been around the promotion specifically, rather than
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like stuff that's individually happened, which is massive. I think it's been nice to reflect back and go like, oh, okay, the stuff that we are trying to do is working, like um storyline wise and marketing wise and all that type of stuff. So I think ultimately a successful year for the little engine that could from Newcastle.
A little engine. That should be a little a tag for it. North Wrestling, a little engine that could. Look, back in 2016, when this sort of master plan, I said this to Riot Cabaret who had it last week. You don't just wake up one morning and say, "I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a wrestling company."
Yeah.
How did it all? What even possessed you to even think about doing it? And then what are the stages that you go through? And maybe what is something that fans don't know about a wrestling promotion that perhaps they should do when it comes to putting on a show?
The first thing is don't do it. It's going to take all your money, all your time, all your relationships, and your sanity and your hairline.
Hey, what?
Dramatically. No, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I haven't been serious about that. It's like you have to love it. Like you have to be in it for the love of it, but it also has to be more than just the love of wrestling, like, and
Mm,
just the love of booking stuff, because I think we can all book stuff, and wrestling is such a subjective thing anyway. Like there is no right or wrong. One guy's WrestleMania like 17 is another guy's one night. What's the ECW? ECW, the one that was absolutely dreadful.
December to dismember.
Yeah, there you go. So do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
so you've got to really understand like the business of it as well, and like understand what you're doing. So rather than my big thing is like I've always been into storytelling. So outside of wrestling, I'm a graphic designer. I've been like specialized in brand design, that type of stuff, and brand storytelling is something that I got into. So that's kind of like ran alongside parallel. You can't just be telling stories though. You need to be telling stories for a reason. The reason's selling tickets, right? So you want people to be engaged with it. You want people to love it. You want people to, feel a part of something bigger that's just a wrestling show. But at the end of the day, that needs to at least pay the bills or, whatever your financial goal is for it. So I think that's always been something in my mind is like the business of wrestling is something that I've just loved from I don't know why, but like, and I think a lot of, I'm preaching to the choir here when I say for some reason the business of wrestling is like one of the most intoxicatingly weird. I use the word intoxicated because it can be toxic. Um, it's just been with us since I was a kid, and I've not really ever been massive into like specific wrestlers, or like I've not actually ever been like a big fan of like no, that's the wrong way of putting it. I've not been a sitting fan watching it. I've always been interested in how it works you know behind the scenes, to the point that I used to run e-feds. I used to run like from the age of about 10 till about the age of 16, probably a bit older, like where I'd run online wrestling promotions. I would role play myself as characters and that type of stuff. um I used to love playing the booking games like mine was EWR was I'd still play it today if I get a bit of free time. TEW is just a bit too complicated for me because I actually run a wrestling promotion, so I don't need to actually feel like I'm doing that either. Um, so yeah, so a combination of all of that type of stuff, really. The actual origin story, if you want me to know, if you
Yeah,
want me to tell that, I know I will ramble on. I'm
that's
really
fine. Don't worry. Go for it. Tell
and
us.
it came from all of that, like, so that's my background and stuff, and it came from me and my wife, or my girlfriend at the time. With me and my wife were talking about like we want to start a business. I don't really like working for people. I like working for myself. I'm a freelancer, so we're like, oh, what kind of business can we start? And we put a list of stuff together, and mine was like, how about a wrestling show? Unsurprisingly, she was like, no, I don't want to do that. I was like, okay, that's fine. So we ended up doing some other stuff. But I always kept coming back to that wrestling show thing. And in 2016, I wasn't really into British wrestling at all. I knew I knew about like Progress, but I hadn't been to a show, and I wasn't watching online or anything like that. You know, I wasn't really sure of the scene. But I started going to a wrestling show that was local to here called Absolute Wrestling, who don't exist anymore. And they were a family-friendly based wrestling promotion. And I had a bit of savings to one side, like I had about like £1,000 in my bank account. I was looking to do. So I used to be in bands. Like I've always wanted to have like a creative project. So I had this thing I'd saved up where I was like, I need to do something, whether it's buy a new guitar or whether it's like start a band or whether it's whatever it is. And I went to the guys at Absolute and I was like, I got £1,000. Can I buy in? I'll work on the door. I don't care what it is, but I'd like to be a partner in what you're doing. Because I went to a show and I was like, this is fucking great. There's like 200 people here. Like these wrestlers are incredible. Like, yeah, I want to be a part of this. They said no. And I completely understand why now.
Yeah.
Like just a straight, and I was maybe this is like I'm a bit more chilled now, but maybe like 8 years ago, I was a little bit more like chip on my shoulder,
Yeah.
and I was like, "The fucking Jesus Christ!" Can I swear? Is it all right to swear? Or should I
It
do
is absolutely fine.
No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I got a bit of a potty mouth.
No, go
And
on.
I was like, "Come on, I've got to like." They don't want to take me on. So then I went, right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do an adult babes promotion in Newcastle. The idea sat on the shelf for a bit, and then I got ill, and I was playing Extreme Warfare in bed, and I was about 2016. I'd have been like 30, 31, and I was like, I'm 31 years old. I'm playing Extreme Warfare in bed. I should really just go with this thing that I've wanted to do all my life. I've never done it and just put a wrestling show on. So I emailed a couple of guys who had been on the show. I found out how much it was going to cost to put a ring up and get a couple of guys. And I was like, oh, and it just snowballed from there. And we put the first show on. And yeah, and we're alive and kicking 8 years later, nearly 9 years later.
Incredible to think. And it was Brace Yourself, right? That was the first
Yeah,
show.
that was
Brace
right. Yeah.
yourself. That's it. So on show day, I mean, you're right. Look, wrestling promoters, in terms of buying in and all that sort of stuff, as you know, we partner with Ignite and stuff, and I know I've got a great relationship with Chris who works it, but that initial time, when I had about 4,000,001 ideas, but it was more like Vince Russo style ideas and
Yeah.
stuff that was never going to work because it was independent wrestling. So once I got into it, I knew. But when on show days, I still get to this day, even though I've got nothing to do with it. We're just sponsoring a match with our championship. It's just that's it. I just get as nervous as he does when it comes to like talent showing up and injuries or pullouts and everything like that. But on your first ever show, what are those emotions do you go through? And then did you get to a point during that show where you thought this is actually working? We can do another one now.
Yeah. So 24 hours, maybe even only 20 hours before the show was due to start. And then the one thing that wrestling's brought to me is like I can be and have been in my years of being quite an anxious guy.
Yeah.
I flip very much between like anxious and maybe some people think I'm a bit arrogant. Like I can flip between the two quite quickly. My confidence levels can kind of like really flip between the two. So if we go back to 2016, it's like, what North brought to me now is loads of confidence and like
Mm.
a little bit more, less of a chip on my shoulder. Back in 2016, I was really nervous. So like
Yeah.
I can remember like for weeks before just thinking I've done the wrong thing. Like, and we also have to bear in mind I started marketing it in February and the show was
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
July. And
Mhm.
in the May, What Culture Pro Wrestling, one of the biggest promotions in the UK, started running from Newcastle, an adult show in Newcastle. So like and credit goes to my wife now because she told me to carry on because I was like, what's the fucking point? Like, what is the
Yeah.
point of doing this now? When you've got like, I went to a show and it was Bret Hart and Jim Cornette and like on the same show, and I was like, holy shit, like what are we gonna do? Um, so she kept me going, and there would have been a time in the past where I would have just quit and just gone,
Mm.
nah, there's no point, like not worth the risk. We had Will Ospreay booked for that first show, and it was just after he had won Best of the Super Juniors in New Japan,
Yeah.
and he was wrestling for Defiant. And about 20 hours before he was supposed to, no, about 16 hours before he was supposed to get on a flight up to Newcastle, he pulled out with an injury,
Oh.
and I was like. My wife and my good friend Carl, who has been a big help in running this show, like he's been my like right hand kind of confidant for a while. Um, they took me to the pub and I just got really drunk and just went, I've no idea what we're gonna do. Um, so I think we went in. I think almost if Will had been there, I would have been more nervous. The
Yeah.
fact that he had pulled out, I was like, well, the worst thing that I could have possibly imagined to have happened has happened. So let's just fucking see what happens. And I think it was really cool. There was 160 people there for the first show, and I think a lot of them thought Osprey was going to be there and just didn't get the memo. But yeah, because the next show we had 80 people there. So there you
Oh,
go.
jeez.
Yeah, that was poor. So I think yeah, it was just like the vibe of it and just the feel of it, and kind of like I got bitten by the bug and kind of going, right, this wasn't the best show that I think I could do. I've learned a lot. I've learned a million things by doing it. I'm pretty sure I can apply them and get better.
Mm. Yeah, and it's definitely seems to take me, shows happen. As you say, attendances got dip, and sometimes you can affiliate it to a certain thing. Like you say, Will Ospreay
Yeah,
pulling out and stuff may have well have done that. That may have well have been the thing. Everyone's you
I
say
think
everyone's
so.
expecting. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it
I think it
happens.
probably it's wrestling.
Well,
Like I think at the time it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me ever. But it did teach me a lesson of going like, well, actually, the thing that we've got to do is we've got to build up the brand of North so that
yeah,
people come and buy
yeah.
tickets regardless of who's on the show. And that there's ebb and flows to that as well because one person's always going to sell more tickets than the other. And I think that kind of like import big name thing is like how to book those people is a big conversation that I have in both the promotions that I work for. Like I'm very much of the ilk of like building your own guys. And if you look at
Mm.
like old progress and if you look at IC from around the time we're talking about, they built their own guys and they used smatterings of imports to make those guys look good. Um, and yeah. So yeah, I think I learned a lot of lessons like in that the first few shows. I think like
Yeah, well, it's the same. It's the same kind of with us when we first, to say, partner with Ignite. We brought the title on, and I'm looking at names, and when I'm looking at names, 'cause I always wanted like, so we modeled the title on Ring of Honor. I always thought Ring of Honor had like the best championships, and I always wanted it to be like a workhorse title. But more importantly, I wanted it so that the wrestler that is champion gets different kind of as many different matches every time. So our
yeah,
first champion was a guy called Smashing Mike, and we brought in Will Cruz was one of the first guys. So we had his Hogan Andre moment, the big slamming the big guy.
yeah.
We then was meant to have Darius. He unfortunately pulled out. We had Eddie Dennis come along. And
Mhm.
that was a massive for him, for Mike. That was like a massive learning curve. He learned how to work a different way. We had James Ellis,
Yeah.
and he eventually lost the title. But like you saying with imports, I was I'm thinking, right, who's a free agent now, and there's things that you just don't really know. There's the flights, you got X's, you got so much other stuff that you need to remember when you're bringing in imports. But you are right. The best way from working, from what I've seen, especially with working, is you need that core roster and you need to build them and put them against those big imports for
Yeah.
the crowd have got to get believable behind your roster because they're the ones that are always going to be there for a
Yeah,
start.
100%. I think that's a really important point, and one that is like I think gets overlooked on a lot of promotions is your audience. So like I've spent like 8 years trying to get into the shoes of my audience and see what my audience like because it's very difficult to detach yourself from a product that you've put together
Mm.
and working from behind the curtain
Yeah,
to as opposed to sitting there as a fan. So for me, um the again it goes back to what I was saying at the start. It's like what sells tickets, like what genuinely sells tickets, because we've brought people in with big profiles that haven't sold tickets. We've all
yeah,
done that. And also like you then got to think about like your guys who come week in, week out, they're your core audience. They're your bread and butter. Yes, of course, you then got like the fans around that who you want to kind of like bring in for the first
yeah,
time and then convert to a core audience. That's fine as well. You need to bring those people in, but they're only going to come back if your core roster is strong enough for them to understand and get behind. So yeah, and a lot of people don't forget that about like champions and having champions against imports and stuff.
yeah,
Got to make sure that your champion looks good and the input looks good. And sometimes that doesn't work out when you just stick dream matches. I'm not a big fan of. So for me, right, with all of this conversation, this is the kind of conversation I have constantly in my head with people, like really understanding what makes wrestling fans buy tickets, not just for one show, but for over and over and over and over again. It's the stories that you tell them. And
yeah,
actually, the people that you use, of course, they're really important, but they don't matter so much. They are important. You've got to use the right people. I don't mean it that way, but the stories are the most important part because that's what people will come back for. That's the
yeah,
thing that will keep people coming back in a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's the reason we've got a really big core of people coming to our Newcastle shows. We've got like we've got nearly 100 who I think come at least who have been coming for probably 8 years, and
yeah,
that's like, and they know all of the ins and outs, probably more than I do, to be honest, of North wrestling. Do you know what I mean? And it's
yeah,
like I think that's a really important thing to have and to cultivate. Way over booking, and I'm not going to say anything else. Way over
yeah.
booking the hot import at the minute because I don't know how much financially that can always work out for you either. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah, totally understand that, and I get it now. I didn't, but working with it, I totally understand it. For me, one of the things, and I said this too, we had Gideon Gray on, and I told him what my biggest bugbear was with British wrestling. And forgive me, this isn't a hit at North or anything like that. It's just my personal. I miss variety. I love the storylines. Storylines are great. I just feel right now in certain promotions that everything is kind of the same, just with different people. They all
Yep.
want to wrestle the same way. I'm a guy that I want on a show. I want a tag. I want a cruiserweight. Yes, I want a heavyweight. I like my heavyweight matches, but I want that variety in wrestling. And I think it's lost now. I don't think we see it as much. I think it's a certain way, just different people wrestling the same way. And I'm a big fan, and like you kind of said, when you said about your champions, booking them strong. I like booking the champion strong, not so strong that they dominate the every person they wrestle, But what I fear at the moment is when I've gone to watch title matches, the champion nearly loses the title every match. And for me, maybe I'm old. Listen, maybe I'm an old school wrestling guy, but I always feel that makes a champion look weak. I don't know. I don't know what your feeling on that is, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I think again, it really depends on what the story is. So, like, I
Mm,
think if it depends on the character who's got the belt, and it depends on what story you're trying to tell. So, if you're trying to tell a story of a dominant champion, I think it can
mm.
make sense. So, if you look at like Samoa Joe, the X Division
Yeah,
title, like brilliant, like he
yeah,
was just completely dominant the whole time. Um, and then finally, when they had the right person, but you have to book that correctly because you
yes,
can kill a load of people in that as well. If you're not building challenges around that champion properly, then you can kill a load of people by just having them steamroller through them.
yeah,
Which with independent wrestling, look, we're talking about TV
yeah,
wrestling there, where they're on every week, and
yes,
they're on global TV,
yeah,
accessible TV every week. It's very different doing that from when you're running a show every 6 weeks. Like
exactly.
so I think we've got to be you have to take that into consideration. But I really, I think in terms of booking strong or whatever, I think it really depends on what story you're trying to tell. And I think there's a
Yeah,
lot of places, there's too many places who are looking at the matches first and not looking at the point of the match. So,
yeah,
like, at the end of the day, I've said this a number of times recently, it's fake fights with fake stakes built around them, right? So, with that in mind, if we're just putting two wrestlers in a ring, and maybe this is because I'm a bit older, but like if I'm putting just two wrestlers in a ring with no reason for them to fight, now I'm not saying that like you have to have this backstory, this big backstory, or like it needs to build for years and years and years, or even
mm,
shows. To be honest, and I say this to a lot of the people that I work with, a lot of the rosters that I work with, it's like I need to be thinking if I've never seen you two before, this is the base level that we work at. Do I understand the stakes of that match by just looking at it? Like, so
yeah,
do I understand? Like you mentioned Will Cruz before. Do I understand that this is a David versus Goliath match? Do I understand that? Do I understand? There's too many matches that go in. I'm like, I'm just watching a wrestling match, and sometimes that can work okay.
mm,
It's rare though. Like it's rare. If you look at Rev Pro, they just did Leon Slater, who is my favorite wrestler at the minute,
brilliant.
versus Isaiah, who is
Did
fucking brilliant, and did an hour long
yes,
Iron Man match, which is absolutely incredible. But they could have just done that and just gone, oh, let's just stick those two in a ring. But they built stakes around it.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
that's Rev Pro, and like Rev Pro book in a very different way to how I.
yeah,
But that in particular was built with stakes around it, and people were interested in going to watch it. And I say this time and time again, it's like, why do people want to go and see a wrestling match? Well, they want to see it because they think something like some passion or something is going to step over the mark. Or boxing have done it. Like
yeah,
they took UFC, they took the WWE model and they pretend that people really fucking hate each other. And
yeah,
why is that? Because people like to see that. Like that's like if I see two mates fighting. And again, unless that's been told in the storyline, Progress did it at Unboxing. They did Big Demo and
yeah,
Axel Tischer.
yes,
But that was done in a way where it was like, oh, actually, I want to see two mates fight. If it's just two guys fighting who don't care about each other, it's purely performative. So yeah, I don't know. I am quite passionate about attaching stakes and
mm,
making stuff mean more than just a match, and
yeah,
every match has to have its reason. But going back to your variety thing, 100% agree with you on that.
yeah,
100%. It's the ultimate wrestling for me is the ultimate variety show. It's a circus. Like you've got the acrobats, you've got the clowns, you've got the big elephant, you've got the ringmaster. You've got all of that. And like I absolutely for North, we try to book it as the ultimate variety show.
mm,
We want something for everyone there. It might not be 100% for you, but if there's 75% of stuff in there that you can go, "Oh, I enjoyed that. We've done what we're supposed to be doing."
exactly. And by the way, Will Cruz moves like a cat
Yeah,
for
yeah.
his
Sometimes you
size.
shouldn't. Sometimes you shouldn't. Sometimes you need
No,
to use his size more. But yeah, he's great.
he
Will.
moved. He moved the ring when we had him. Ignite. He moved the ring. He squashed Mike in the corner, and the ring literally moved.
Yeah, he's absolutely brilliant. He's really versatile. Will he can do everything. Yeah, he can do everything. He's really really good. He's doing well at Progress as well now. He's
Yes,
starting.
he has. With another someone that does the North quite a bit, Gene Money, um, with his mad way of. I think he's great. Gene's a character, and he's a really good character. But Well, you've kind of touched upon a little bit there about storylines and stuff, and I was going to ask about, this isn't disparaging any other company when I ask what makes North different from every
Yeah.
other wrestling company. But you've kind of touched on it a little bit there, variety and store and matches with meaning. But is there anything else there that sort of you think that separates North from everything else?
Yeah, and it's like so. I think we've got like Rev Pro absolutely have their version, their style of wrestling, which
Yep.
is super enjoyable.
Yep.
They're on top at the minute. They have that locked up, so you don't need to go anywhere else to see anything like that.
Mm.
Um, I think we're very different to that in that I think we are the variety show. I think we are the show that does a bit of everything. I think we have a certain like je ne sais quoi that we've built up over like the last 8 years, which I'm not really sure how exactly to describe it, but it's based in the adult style promotion that we've had. It's based in the kind of yeah, I want to say like the drama, the kind of crowd interaction, the feel of it. Like it has a live feel to it, no matter whether you're watching it online or whether you're actually there. It's definitely a bit more raucous. We've very much focused on community building at the start of it as well. So I think that's a huge part of it. Like we really care about how our audience perceive our product and how they receive it. And I think now we're starting to move into something that's just a little bit more storyline driven. And I think, like I said, you've got something that is already in the country that's a bit more pure wrestling based. Um, North is North though, and I've toiled with that name for a long time, up until recently where I thought about changing it to kind of fit maybe like a bit more of a global representation. But then I'm like, I think if we take away that, we are intrinsically Northern. Like, I think Northern can be a state of mind anyway, and I don't think it means that it's Northern style wrestling.
Yeah.
I just feel like yeah. So what is that makes us different? I think it is that kind of it's something I continuously ask ourselves, but I think where the exciting kind of not unhinged, but like I think where the energetic side of wrestling, which I loved from being a kid, in a much more modern way. Like we're not doing bra and panties matches.
I don't think nowadays, with how great the women are, we would even dream about using that
No, no.
nowadays because it's just come on leaps and bounds. You mentioned the guy a little minute ago who's one of your friends. You said Leon Slater. I know he's a big man. He knows he's one of your big names over in North, and
Yeah.
the stuff that he's done in TNA. And I was on TNA doing a TNA thing recently, and I said that if he's not X Division champion or a champion in TNA in 2025, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah, 100%. He's honestly, I don't know, name a better wrestler at the age of 20 that's come out of Britain. I think he is you're talking about Osprey and Pac.
Yeah.
Like and he's 20 years old and that's what we're talking about. And it's like the thing about Leon that I think gets missed, right? Because I think everyone looks at his style, which is just fucking brilliant, and like it's so adaptable, and the way he tells stories in the ring as well is fantastic. Um, but everyone's talking about that in those terms, so they're looking at like the high flying stuff, the X Division stuff that he can do. For me, the thing about Leon is the guy knows how to get a crowd into the palm of his hand. He knows how to tell stories. He's way, way, way beyond his years in understanding how to work a room, like and how to and how to like convey emotion and how to connect. And there's wrestlers who have been doing it for 15 years who are very successful who are not on his level on that,
No,
which
he
just
is.
like blows my mind. It blows my
Yeah.
mind.
Some of the stuff that he does, and as you say, not even just from what the wrestling he does, but the whole reading of the room, as you say, getting the crowd into the house is incredible. To touch on TNA though, because you've had quite a few. I think you've had Joe Hendry, you've had Rhino appear in TNA. Sorry, from in North in the past. Does it obviously the relationship with a global brand such as TNA, and they are certainly doing big things this year. They've been doing big things for the last couple of years. It shows you though that the reputation that North have got, and it's easy. You can just pay a wrestler, and usually you get a fee or whatever. You pay a wrestler. They've still got to want to come to wrestle at the place that they want that you offer the opportunity to. So it
Yeah.
must brings you great pride and pleasure in the fact that people like the Joe Hendrys, like the Rhinos, want to come to North to wrestle for you.
Yeah. So like so Joe Henry was the big one and probably opened up the door to that whole TNA relationship. And that I say relationship, it was the UK tour that we worked on them with. It
Yeah.
hasn't necessarily gone much further than that, and that I don't want to overblow that, but yeah, it's nice to, I mean, it's amazing to think that I brought TNA to Newcastle. If you told me that in 2009, it would have blown my mind. But that started with Joe Henry in regards to before that, the only kind of place he was really wrestling in the UK was like Wrestle Carnival.
Yeah.
He wasn't really wrestling many places for a period of time. And we brought him in and clicked immediately in terms of like what he's trying to do, and what he was trying to put across, and how he was trying to grow. Now he's massively outgrown us, but like basically, I think treating him well and becoming friends with him and having a professional relationship with him. When he then went to or kind of got moved through TNA, and he kind of worked his way up through that. We were one of the first ones to, on his kind of recommendation to Scott D'Amore at the time, to when they wanted to come over to the UK, who they should try and work with. So that was like, again, it's that thing of like treating people well, and it's something that we've always wanted to do at North. Is you know, I'm not a wrestler. I never profess to be a wrestler. I never will be a wrestler. Never would be a wrestler. It's never gonna, So when I'm telling wrestlers what I would like from them in the ring or whatever, I'm very keen to kind of point that out. But I would like an element of our promotion to be a wrestler's promotion. So like, it can be a well marketed, enjoyable place to come as a fan, but it can also be a really good place to work. So I think like having that professionality and having that kind of experience that we have across our team. So whether that's Alex, the videographer, who is a documentarian and works for a ballet company and does all of their video output, whether it's Matty, who works on creative as well, who is a video games designer and a wrestler, whether it's Liam Slater, the PPW coach, who's working with us, whether it's Kirsten, who's videographer as well. We've all got experience that stretches outside, professional experience that stretches outside of wrestling, and we're able to bring that in. So when we have those relationships with people, we're able to treat them properly. Riot Cab is a great example of a promotion that is ran exceedingly professional, and they're bringing their experience from like the theater world in to help with doing that. So yeah, so I think being professional was the main thing. I think having relationships with people and gaining trust by doing the right thing always, like whether that's creatively or whether that's just feeding people backstage and having that type of thing. I think that is literally how it's helped us really. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. So listen, I think what did Matt Cardona say once? Always bring water to an independent show or something along those lines, right? And it is.
absolutely mental. Like
Yeah,
that should be it's one of your costs along a venue cost, chair cost, water, like at least water. Yeah.
yeah, I know, indeed. You got to look after the people that you're working with. I mean, at the end of the day, they're doing a show, and obviously you're paying them, but at the same time, at least be a bit respectful. But one of those interesting ones, because you mentioned there that you wasn't a wrestler or anything like that prior to this, and a lot of promotions that I've gone through, and a lot of they're former wrestlers. They do it. Was there a difficulty at the start? Because you mentioned sort of you saying there that you didn't want you're kind of getting it across. Look, I'm not a wrestler, but this is what I want. Was there like a difficulty with the wrestlers going, well, hang on a minute, why are we sort of taking advice from somebody that's not been in the business before when we can probably put it on without you sort of getting involved, if that makes
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, and without a doubt. So like I still think that exists now.
Mm.
Even in my work with Progress, I think it still exists now where it's like you're not a wrestler and it's like that's fine. So the only like the way to combat that is to accept that that's a limitation. Like it would be
Yeah,
like being a football manager without ever playing football. Like Mourinho never played football, but he was able
yeah,
to do it. And the way that you do that is by I've never ever told wrestlers really I've certainly never told a wrestler how to put a match together. Like I'm not interested in that. There might be certain things that I'll talk about and points that I want to hit and all of that
yeah,
stuff. Um, but in terms of putting a match together, and I think it's one of the reasons why people like coming to work for North is that I have to trust wrestlers and their experience. I have to trust them and their creativity. They are way better than I ever would be in putting a match together. But the one thing that I do know is I do know how to connect my audience to a wrestling show. I
Yeah.
do really understand what my wants. I do understand storytelling, and it's taken me to this point where I understand storytelling in wrestling to a decent degree. I've still got way more experience to get. I've still got a lot to learn. But I think the best thing that I ever did was, and from the get-go, me and Rory Coyle have been really close.
Mhm.
It was have him involved from a wrestler's perspective and pretty much run, and it's grown out since then. So we've now got Liam Slater on the team as
Yeah.
well, and we also talk to a lot of the veteran wrestlers. With I make sure that I run things through them, but it makes sure that I get a sense check. Make sure that what I'm saying isn't me being the dickhead promoter who doesn't know anything about wrestling. Like make sure that the stuff that I'm putting together has wrestlers in, like it has a wrestler's viewpoint on it. And I think that's the way to combat it, really.
Yeah, no, definitely, totally agree with that for sure. Before we start wrapping up, Drew, I want to give you a few questions. Actually, there's one I forgot to ask before we come on here. Full disclosure, I did say to Andrew there'd be a couple of questions that I would
Yeah.
ask, but he may have to get his thinking cap on. But
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
one that I've actually thought of since then. So apologies since we've been talking.
Go for
Do you
it.
have a favourite match that you've actually seen at North?
My favorite match I've seen at North, without a doubt, was there's a handful. It was Rory Coyle versus Liam Slater, which was like a 6 year culmination of a storyline that we
Wow.
told. But for me, it probably would have been Leon Slater versus Liam Slater at Thunderstruck 1 when Leon won the belt. And it was like coach versus mentor. It was just like, and it was a really special moment. Like at that point, it was the biggest show we ever ran. Never thought we'd ever get to that point. To then have that culminate with two of our guys, a title change, and like the crowd would just went absolutely nuts. So yeah. I think that match would be in there.
There we go. And is that available for everyone to see?
It is, so you can
Yeah.
go and see it on. So well, we were on Extreme TV, a
Yep.
Freeview channel. You can only get it by the boxes, I think. So it's Extreme
Yes.
Freeview channel 281. That sporadically, I think they repeat it, but then also Triller TV Plus, which used to be Fight TV.
Yep.
You can get it through the Triller TV Plus subscription. It's on there. Or, which I would prefer you to do, is patreon.com/North Wrestling NCL, because that goes right into our back pocket.
It does. There you go. You've got to do that for sure. I mean, I was seeing some of the shows on there. They were absolutely amazing. The
Thank
ones
you.
that I've seen, they were brilliantly put on. And that again, variety for me. If you've got something with variety on it, it does. It works for me. So you
Keeps
got a
those,
fan there. I just gone.
keeps our dead attention spans going, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And plus, I do need to make a trip up there at some
Yeah.
point to come up and see you. It's an interesting one for me because I have my boy on a Saturday and he's not a
Yeah.
wrestling fan. So it's like I've got to try and sort it. I will definitely get up to a North show for sure. Anyway, away from North very briefly, there was two questions I said to you before the show that I was going to ask you. I'll do the one that I think you might have first more than the second one, which is if you could, if we're in Royal Rumble, look, we're in Royal Rumble season, we're in WrestleMania season, WWE, Netflix, all of that stuff that's kicked off. With the Royal Rumble coming up, I'd like you to name a surprise entrant that you think it doesn't, whether it's possible or impossible. Who would you like to be a surprise entrant to the Royal Rumble this
The
year?
Royal Rumble.
Yeah,
For me personally, it definitely has to be my pal Joe Hendry. Like I would love this, and I know it's getting rumored. There's like, if you look in the dirt sheet, there's
yeah,
all the rumors, and I can't see past that. Like, of course, there's other dream ones and stuff. I'd love to see other people there, but if I could see Joe Hendry there, there's people I've met along the way who are now bigger and off doing stuff. Joe Hendry, Gabe Kidd as well is
oh,
somebody. His match with Kenny Omega was unbelievable. It
yes,
elevated himself to. He was already there in everyone else's mind, but I think it confirmed to a lot of people. You know, people like that, I just love to see
yeah.
succeed.
Gabe Kidd is an absolute nutcase. I met him at All In with Driller.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
okay, yeah. Well, they were both on our show, all in as well. So like, yeah, they're quite true to the gimmick.
yeah, no, they certainly are. Funnily enough, one of my co-hosts on the show, Dave, he lives in the Midlands and he
Right.
knows the Hunter brothers.
Yeah.
and he was fitting the boiler. I think it was Lee Hunter the next day, and he was telling the Gabe. I don't think Gabe and Driller really believed him, but it was just one of those stories that you tell. But
The small
anyway,
world wrestling.
very. He went to a place yesterday, and they were talking about this show. And I was just like, that's just stupid. And I
It's wild,
honestly,
isn't it? It's well. I was walking around. Where the fuck was that? I was walking Bristol, and I saw a North shirt. Me and my wife were like, "Oh, huh?" So whoever in Bristol is wearing a North shirt, shout out to you. That's absolutely class.
just quickly, actually, on that before I ask the second question, is that sort of like I've seen it people wearing like obviously when we've done our shows we've given shirts out and I've seen people come to the shows with our shirts. How surreal is that though? When like, I can't even imagine asking a wrestler when they walk around they see someone wearing a shirt with their face on it or something like that. When you're the owner of North and as you say you're Newcastle, you're down in Bristol and you see someone wearing a North wrestling shirt, how does that make you feel as a promoter?
It's like it's the best thing. Like, I mean, it is like I think you get so wrapped up into like so you see people walking around like where I live very rarely, but like you will see every now and then a couple of times a year you'll see someone wearing a North shirt or a hat or whatever, and it's like I think because I'm in it here, I'm like, yeah, okay, good. I'd like to see more of that. Like, break. I think when you take yourself out of it and you see it in somewhere like Bristol, you're like, what the fuck? Like, that's incredible. Like, it does blow my mind. And this Christmas we sent like 5 packages out to America or Canada, and you're like, what? Like, they want our like this tiny little show that we started that I was talking about before, like, which at one point had like 80 people coming through the door. Like, this tiny little show in Newcastle is starting to reach other parts of the globe. Like my ambitions for it are way bigger than that, but like just sometimes you have to look back, and I think seeing it in like in a place that is way like really far away from where I live, it's yeah, it's pretty mind blowing.
Absolutely incredible. That's brilliant to hear. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens for you guys in 2025. But there's
Thank
one
you.
other question before we start giving you the field and letting you let us know of your events. And that is obviously, we're in Royal Rumble season, but we're also in WrestleMania season. And WrestleMania season is normally dream matches that you would be able to put on. That's generally, I mean, nowadays probably not so much. It's 2 days and everything else. But if you could choose a WrestleMania dream match, and this could be with British talent, doesn't have to be, who would you put in there?
This is a really difficult one, right? Because I think I get so wrapped up in doing my own stuff. Like I barely watch any wrestling anymore. A, I'm not allowed to, and B, it would just kill me. But like I think, right, okay. So my favorite wrestler of all time. So if I was going to build this match, it
Yep.
would have to include my favorite wrestler of all time who I never got to see live, which is Eddie Guerrero. Like,
Oh,
I
beautiful.
think Eddie is the greatest wrestler in just every way, shape, or form. Like, especially the fact he was a bit smaller as well. I
Yeah.
think that's part of it, like it doesn't matter like how big you are. Like, I think the idea that the character and the understanding of the art form in terms of drawing heat, in terms of telling a story, in terms of just even like the little things like that still get used, like the referee,
Yeah.
the chair bump, like
Yeah.
behind the referee's back. That still gets, I mean, that gets overused now, but like that type of clever thinking for me. And I think I don't know who else I would stick in there, but I think this is probably indicative of my era of wrestling is you could stick anyone else in against him and I think I would love him. But I would choose from someone like Kurt Angle. I know they've already wrestled, but like I would love to see that match. I'd love to see, yeah, Kurt or like a Brian Danielson or something like that. Just another fantastic technical wrestler who also knows how to tell stories. Like I'm coming to a bit of a blank. I'm gonna come off this. My friends are gonna watch it and go, "You went Eddie Guerrero and Brian Danielson? What?"
Ah, I, if you got time, I can quickly tell you an Eddie Guerrero story when I met him.
Go for it. Please
Right,
tell me.
so here we go. WrestleMania 21, LA. Right, we took a long flight, so we went from we went backwards to go forwards. We went to Germany, stopped at Germany, touchdown in LA, probably I don't know lunchtime. The hotel has gotten a Denny's to it, like every other hotel in LA now at the time had a Denny's. So we was eating, having lunch in Denny's. We were scrolling through and we saw an appearances, and it was Eddie Guerrero at Toys R Us between 6 and 8. So we've looked at the time, and it was like 1 o'clock, and we were like, "We'll go down there. We'll have a quick look." And it was limited to 500 people. We
Yeah.
went down there. There was tents. people in tents. And we're like, oh shit, we're not going to be able to do it. So anyway, we join the queue. We're like, well, look, we're here. Let's just
Yeah.
join it. If we don't get in, fine. The woman's coming down with the tickets she's handing out. And there was like six of us, and we were 495, 496, 497, 49, and 500. So we were the last six or four, five or six people in
Yeah.
the queue. So we were like buzzing. So obviously you go out. Some people go out of the queue, we get drinks, come back, and all that sort of stuff. Eddie pulls up, gets the police escort in, and the signing's going on, and like we're getting close, but so's the time. And it
Yeah.
gets to like 8, and we're just in the door of Toys R Us. We've got, and she said, "Look, his time's over. We've got to go and ask him. You may or may not get to see him." And we're about, oh, shit, like we've spent all this time, but if we could still get a chance. So she's walked over to him and she's pointed out, "You've got these people here. Are you okay?" He gets on the table. He does his shoulder shake. We got all night, I say.
Oh man.
That's
Oh
exactly what I said, other than the fact I went, oh shit. Like, it's just like the first time, first time I ever met Eddie, had the privilege of meeting him. But yeah, it was like that. And that was the year, unfortunately, he passed away later on that year. But that was
man,
then. I mean, I've had
that's
great,
amazing.
I've had the privilege of meeting like Undertaker, Shawn, my heroes like Edge, Shawn Michaels, Triple H,
Yeah.
Cena, and people like that. But that moment will be etched in my memory forever from that guy.
Good. And this is the thing about Eddie, it's just so sad, isn't it? I
Yeah.
genuinely think he was from that era the best professional wrestler of all time. And I think like yeah, so I tell you what, yeah, that is such a lovely story about him. And I think that like anyone who's met him has said he's like that. But here's my match. I've thought about it.
Oh,
It's Eddie versus Jake the Snake Robots.
robots. Who's that?
Jake the Snake Roberts. I just would love to see an angle that culminated at WrestleMania between both of those men in their prime. I think the promos would be amazing. I
Yeah.
think the stories they would tell together, and I think the match itself would be structured just just enough to make it feel like you had invested a lot of time into it, but enough to turn the screw when you're ready for it to go. And yeah,
Yeah.
I would think that those two, if we're talking about putting stakes together and telling stories and having a story and having a match that mattered, those two would be the two that I would choose to put something together.
Incredible match. And you said steaks and not snakes, right?
Yeah, and not robots.
And not robots, no, definitely not. And look, we're going to wrap up here, Andrew. Look, it's been going to be a busy year for North. Tell everybody, if you've got the list of events you've got coming up, when are they go? When are they? Where can they get tickets from it? And talk more about the Patron quickly as well.
Yeah, yeah. So next show we've got coming up is February the 1st. It's in Newcastle. It's All Roads Lead North. Is that it? All Roads Lead North? Yeah, it is.
Yes,
All
it is.
Roads Lead North. Anarchy Bruco in Newcastle. That's where we normally run our shows. We've just extended the venue, so we're getting about 350 people in there, which is brilliant. It's a bit more of a square room. Tickets are on northwrestling.co.uk. The next show after that is the NCL Cup, which is a big part of our calendar. That's on Saturday, March the 1st. Last two winners were Miles Kamen last year and Rio before that, and we know what's happened to both of those guys. They've
Yes.
just gone on amazing tears. Our big show, we've got some shows in between that, but our big show is July the 12th, which is Thunderstruck 3, and it's at the Walker Dome. And we've announced Tajiri for that one.
Way.
Tajiri is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I might just pack it up and leave after we've done that one. We've had Gangrel, we've had Scotty Too Hotty, we've now got Tajiri. That's enough for me. I think I'm done. But yeah, northwrestling.co.uk is the place to go and look for tickets and merchandise and all that type of stuff. Our Patreon is where we are giving away a lot of behind the scenes stuff. We're going to be increasing that this year in terms of what we do. We're going to be doing a lot more video content. We did a documentary last year called Watch the Lights, which was centered around us creating Thunderstruck, the first Thunderstruck, and Leon Slater's rise to that. We're at the point of like we've put it to a bunch of film festivals and we've been rejected from a few film festivals. Though, so we're at a point where we're probably going to be putting that up on our Patreon in before the next show. It's just under an hour. It's a brilliant watch. If you love Leon Slater, you love British wrestling. If you've ever wanted to know what happens in an independent wrestling show, you get all our full shows on there. You can get full shows without commentary if you don't want to listen to the commentary. But our commentary is Tom Campbell and Vader Scott, who are two of the best in the business. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I've done it.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, before I go, I've got to run down what we've got coming on. I will take a breath. I promise there's quite a bit. Obviously, we've got WWE referee Jimmy Corderas coming on actually in a few hours, funnily enough, at time of recording. Anyway, it may not
Wow.
go out the same day, but it's going to be time of recording. Jimmy Corderas. Another independent showcase is going to be recorded as well with a wrestler from Sacrifice Pro Wrestling called Tig. He's a one to watch in 2025. So we're going to get him on. Funnily enough, Natalie Sykes is coming on, and she's been on a few North shows.
Natalie's a big part of North. Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah. So she's coming on as well. Tomorrow, at time of recording, tomorrow being Wednesday, the 8th of January, Hollywood Haley J will be joining us as well as part of our NWA spotlight. This coming Friday, I'm going to be sitting down recording with Shelly Martinez as well. And then finally for next week, the last one I'm going to do in terms of interview wise, the Independent Showcase returns with Adam Bolt will be coming on next week as well. And then just a quick plug, I can't give you the can I give you the date? No, I can't give you the date yet. Buckle Up Free. So here we go. Obviously, we've done the show so we've done two shows so far with Ignite where we've sponsored it, where we've joint produced it, two sellouts. We're going to go for the hat trick. That's all I can say at this time. And finally, obviously, our championship at Ignite on February the 9th will not be defended. Mark True has decided he is not going to show up, mainly due to the fact that he thinks we're stacking the deck against him. A fatal four-way in a tag team match seems quite fair for me for the championship, but he doesn't. So we're going to be announcing a number one contenders match for that in due course, and that will be on our platform, our social platforms. Speaking of social platforms, as we wrap up, Drew, where's North's platforms?
You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. No, sorry, Instagram, Facebook, North Wrestling NCL. Twitter is North_NCL. You head to northwrestling.co.uk to get all of our links to wherever you want to go. And as I said before, patreon.com/North Wrestling NCL. You can help pay me for a new kitchen that we're getting.
There you go.
I'm
Pay
joking.
him for a North kit for a new kitchen, not North kitchen, a new. You could get the North logo on it. You know, they could get these
Yellow,
marble.
yeah, it's yellow and black.
There you go, Andrew. It's been great having you on. It's been a whirlwind hour talking to you about all things North. I
Thank
will
you, Adam.
do my best to get to a show this year. I need to because what I've seen on your Patron is absolutely incredible. I am going to get around to actually physically reviewing one of those soon. I was going to do it over Christmas. Unfortunately, my family come up earlier than expected, so I didn't get a chance.
Bloody
But
family.
yes,
They get right in the
families.
way of wrestling, let me tell you.
Yeah, exactly that. Sorry about that, but I will get around to doing it. But I obviously wish you guys in North the best of luck in
Thank you.
2025. And we'll obviously look, we'll plug anything that you want us to plug on the channel as well. Just send me stuff. I'll put it out there so people can get there as well. But this has been Independent Showcase. This has been North Wrestling. He has been Andrew. I have been Adam. And until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and goodbye.